Imagine earning a degree that prepares you with real skills for the real world. Capella University's programs teach skills relevant to your career so you can apply what you learn right away. Learn how Capella can make a difference in your life at capella.edu.
Motherhood. 1 minute, you're mom of the year.
I love you, Mommy.
Then the next, not so much. From bath time to bullying, from potty training to puberty, parenting is full of challenges. But one thing is for certain, you are not alone. Welcome to Modern Mom Probs. I'm your host, author, mother, parenting expert, Tara Clark. Join me while we tackle today's modern mom problems. Welcome back to Modern Mom Probs, where we're trying to solve the world's modern mom problems. But if we can't do that, hey, at least we're having fun talking about them. If you like what we're doing here on the show, please consider subscribing or leaving a review. I actually challenge you to reach out to me via email or DM on Instagram, on Threads, whatever. Let me know what you think of the show because I care what you think. I really want to know what you think about the show. Today's topic is finding a balance between kids and smartphones. I'm joined by Tessa Stuckey. Tessa Stuckey is also known as the mom therapist, and she works with adolescents, parents, and families navigating the digital tech-filled world that our children are growing up with now. She's also the author of the book For the Sake of Our Youth, co-founder of the nonprofit Look Up. She's dedicated to teaching how to create a healthier balance with our devices and our lives. Tessa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I became a therapist about 10 years ago. And in the process of becoming a therapist, I also became a mom. And I became a therapist, one, I think because both of my parents are therapists and it's just in our blood. And as much as I tried to deny that for many years, I finally realized that I am actually pretty good with people. And so I became a therapist really wanting to help teenagers. Even though both of my parents are therapists, I struggled in my teenage years, just like everyone does. Adolescent years are very, very fragile. And so I wanted to work with teenagers. And I became known as the mom therapist because as a mom, there was just too many things coming into my office working with teenagers that I would then turn around and parent my kids differently. We live in a very, very different time than any of us were when we were teenagers. And so I really wanted to share with other moms the things that I was learning that were making me a better mom in today's world due to what was coming into my office.
Yeah. What was it like having parents that were therapists when you were a teenager?
I don't know how to compare it to other people's experience because it's all I've known, but it was a lot of emotion expressing, a lot of deep, deep conversations. Like it's funny you asked me that because the other day somebody asked me that. I don't remember ever having like surface level hangout conversation. It always got deep. And I should say still to this day, my parents, if I go to their house, like it gets deep. So sometimes that can be a good thing. Sometimes that's not such a great thing. I was the black sheep of the family. I was ready to go party with friends. I wanted to be super social. And I was sandwiched between two very good students, academically driven, not super, super social. So I got in a lot of trouble. And I think that I kind of rocked the boat with my parents who, it just goes to show that even two therapists who work with families can struggle with their relationship with their teenager and raising teenagers too. That just shows how hard it is to parent teenagers.
Yeah, it is super challenging. And I think that's a really nice anecdote to share so that people don't think oh gosh, it's just me. Even
Absolutely.
therapist parents have a challenging time.
Yes, absolutely.
You said you have 4 kids. What is the age range there?
So my oldest is about to turn 13. So I have 4 boys. So 13, 11, and then twin 9-year-olds.
Awesome. I have an 11-year-old boy. He just turned 11 and a half.
Oh, yeah. I had 4 under 4, and it was kind of, I graduated with my master's degree, and then a week later found out I was pregnant with twins. So I had a fresh 3-year-old and a fresh 1-year-old, and then found out I was pregnant with twins. So by the time the twins came, my oldest was 3.5. So it was a very, look back at those days. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so blurry. I don't really remember. We were in survival mode constantly, and one of the things that I was doing was putting the TV on all the time and handing them my phone if I needed a minute or we were out to eat or whatever, just to kind of keep the peace. And then that was the biggest thing that was coming into my office with teenagers, that they were struggling with screen addiction, social media issues, the need for an instant fix because they've grown up with technology. And so then when they would hit those hormonal years, they just wanted that instant fix. And as we all know, there's no instant fix for emotional distress. So I realized that so many of these teenagers were struggling with their mental health due to not knowing how to truly feel feelings and not learning how to ever truly regulate, because they were getting a tablet or a phone anytime there was discomfort. And I was doing that to my kids. And so I felt this huge, urge to get my husband on board that we were getting rid of tablets. There were going to be no games on my phone, no apps that would distract them when we're out to eat or what have you. And then I felt the need to share that with every mom who would listen as well. So that's what I've been doing now for since 2016. So about 8 years now, I've been pretty vocal about the harms of screens and social media for kids.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because it is one of the biggest modern mom problems. And every episode I ask my guests, what do you think is the biggest modern mom problem out there? And most are tied to screen time. The number one I hear time and time again is social media comparison. And obviously that is tied to that. And so let's crack all of this open.
Absolutely.
How it's like, I almost don't even know where to begin with this, but I'm going to begin with this question. How do you handle the mom, everyone else has a phone but me conversation?
Right. So I will say that if you have younger kids, start that conversation young. Look for real life examples when you're out to eat or you're running to the store and you see a toddler staring at the mom's phone, not to shame that mom, but to recognize, look, buddy, that toddler is, missing out on this and that and whatever, find real life opportunities to teach the lesson, but starting young. Because then when they get older and they're asking for a phone, or they may not even come and ask for a phone because they already know the answer. It is part of our conversation in this house all the time because screens are everywhere. And so we're constantly talking about what's safe and healthy screen use versus unhealthy screen use. Now, if your kids are older, say they are 10, 11, 12, and they are asking for a phone and you did not know to talk about it when starting at 4 years old, that's okay too. What I always say to my kids is, if their mommy and daddy knew how much this was hurting their brain and their heart, they wouldn't let them have a phone at this age either. Because, my kids started recognizing that kids in their classroom, starting in 2nd grade, were getting smartphones. And so they would come home, or video games that we were not comfortable with. And so they would come home and ask, why does so-and-so get that? Or when do I get to do that? And my answer is always, it is so bad for the brain and the heart in ways that you are just not prepared for, but we're going to get you there. So the goal here is to really motivate them that this is not forever. Phones, screens, video games, they're not horrible for us. obviously we're recording a podcast right now. It can be used with intention and to be productive and creative. Technology is a beautiful thing, but we need to make sure our kids are ready for it. And there's so many elements that I think most parents don't either consider or even know to consider. And so to say to your child, look, we're not ready for that yet. I'm not even ready for the commitment as the mom to make sure everything's safe. I don't know how to do that yet. Let me look into it, but we are going to get you ready for that soon-ish.
What are some of the things, right, depending on the age, what are some of the things you mentioned, like some of the things that parents don't know? Like what are some of those things that they don't know that they should know?
Sure. I think the biggest things that really jump out to me is how easy it is to get addicted to screens, whether it's video games or a game on your phone or YouTube or social media. It's so crazy easy it's a slippery slope. And these kids who are lacking true prefrontal cortex development, they do not have that piece to say, oh, I've been on this for 30 minutes. I should get off. A lot of us adults don't have that willpower, right? It's so easy. And I think that the amount of dopamine that we get when we're online and on screens is comparable to gambling, alcohol, and cocaine. And so we have to remember that it really is flooding our brains with dopamine, which means that little life joys aren't that joyful anymore. Those little natural dopamine drips we're supposed to get as humans, fresh baked cookies, watching the sunrise, making your bed, finishing a book, it doesn't feel that great anymore because you're used to that dump. So it's a slippery slope. Another thing is really and truly challenging our kids to build resilience without a screen. It's so, so important for our kids to be bored, to be uncomfortable, to experience being nervous, to experience being in a social situation and not just, isolating right there with a screen. That's really, really important for our kids in order to build the mental strength they need to take on the real world and the online world someday. I think that if parents realized the decline in mental health that happens so rapidly when they do allow their child to get on a social media app, or they do allow their child to have their phone all day, every day, if they understood the depression, anxiety, the thoughts of suicide, the exposure to inappropriate content, the exposure to violent and traumatizing content, and how easy it is for our kids to stumble onto that, it's usually unintentional. Our kids are not typing in, something disgusting usually, and it just pops up because that's what the online world is. It's unregulated. And so if parents understood how rapidly that can happen to their child, I think that most parents would not be so easily to just hand it over, really and truly. But most parents, I don't think, are hearing that or exposed to the reality of it enough.
Yeah, I think you're 1,000% right. A friend of mine earlier today had posted on social media something along the lines of, hey, parents, let's get together and make a pact to not have our children have social media at a certain age or not have phones at a certain age. And I thought more people would be like, yes, 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 rah, 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 let's do it. Right. But the comments were interesting. They were like, no, you need to be a parent and need to learn how to set boundaries. And it shouldn't be like all of us agreeing on one thing. Every household is different. And I think it's interesting because there is a certain nuance to that, of course.
Absolutely. And I think that that's what makes it really hard, is that we don't have this united front as parents. If you look at car seats, there's been an evolution through the years protecting our kids when we're in the car. My mom always tells this story. Well, my grandmother tells the story, but she's 95, so she doesn't always tell it with great detail. That when my mom was a baby, she was literally in a basket in the front seat. And one time my grandmother had to come to a stop and little baby Joanne flew onto the floorboard, and my grandmother drove till she got home with baby on the floorboard, right? Now, my mom is
Oh
very
my
old. Don't tell
goodness.
anyone that my mom would die if she
Yeah.
knew I was revealing her age right now.
Yeah.
But we're talking 50s, 1950s
Sure.
was when she
Sure.
was born.
Sure.
So think about the evolution of car seats. Unfortunately, many children had to die for people to really take that seriously, for people to say, oh, this is not an option. You know, this is a non-negotiable. I'm putting my screaming, tantrum throwing toddler in this seat because they don't like to be in this seat, but too bad, kid, I'm keeping you alive, you know? For a while, people probably were like, oh no, she really doesn't like it, so I'm not going to have her sit in the car seat. Or no, it's my kid, my car. I can do whatever I want. I don't have to strap my kid in, you know? So we've come a long way when you look at the car seat. And I really believe with smart devices and social media, it's going to be the same. I know for me as a mom, I'm not willing to risk my child getting hurt mentally, emotionally, physically by going along with what other people are doing. I'm going to protect my kids in the best way that I can. And that is not to say that I'm not teaching them how to be on technology in a healthy way. There are boundaries that need to be put in place for all kids. It's not all or nothing. And I think that's where people get defensive. It's like, oh, but my son loves to build on Roblox, or my kid loves da 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 online. And I think that some of that can be really great, but we have to be aware of the dangers, and we do have to set up those boundaries. And so many people, it's very complex too. It's very overwhelming to set up all the parameters with technology. So I usually tell parents, if you're not committed to really give it your all when you're giving your kids technology, then don't enter that world yet. It will be okay. Your child will not be delayed with technology. They will be just fine when you do allow those personal devices in your house.
That's good advice about being all in, because I genuinely believe that is the case, that we have to be committed to what our kids are consuming, what our kids are creating, who they're talking to, all of that kind of stuff. My son, I'll tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
Several years ago, which it was 2 Christmases ago, my son asked for a phone. So just to give you an idea, he was 10. And he asked for a phone from Santa Claus. And Christmas morning, Santa Claus did not bring him a phone. And so he said, but Santa Claus always gets everybody exactly what they ask for. He's always gotten me what I've asked for. And so that was when we found out about Santa. But I don't know who's listening, if kids are listening with their moms in the car right now.
You might have to put a little trigger warning at the beginning of the episode.
Trigger warning about this. And so that was the point. And so then we had to have this conversation about both Santa and the cell phones. And so this past Christmas, he received a Bark phone. I don't know if you're familiar with the Bark phones.
Love Bark with all of my might. Love. We've got 2 of them.
Yeah. So he received a Bark phone, which is for people who aren't familiar, it's a very stripped down. It is truly just a phone. And
it's a simple phone.
It's very simple. Exactly. Call and text. And he has chess. He has the game chess on his phone, which he doesn't even play. And so it's funny because he asked for this phone. He finally got it. And then he was just like, okay, cool. And it stays in his backpack at school, like during school. He never touches it. And he only uses it for emergencies. If he's like maybe going to a friend's house or going out to the movies or something like that. But by no means is he, well, he doesn't even have Google on it. So he has no internet on it. So he's not even scrolling. And he was like, but I wanted a phone. Well, we're like, but you got a phone. You got exactly what you asked for.
Yeah. It can call and text.
You could call your friends. And it's funny because he doesn't call anybody on it or text.
I know. Isn't that
it's
funny?
really just for emergencies. And so really shout out to the Bark people, the Bark phone system there. Because also what's great about it is that if you're involved in any text message chains that are questionable at all, the parents receive an email outline, like laying out everything that's going on. A few weeks ago, my son's friend was acting wild in a group chat. I mean, just like posting crazy pictures and really just out there stuff. And my husband and I both received the email notifications. And so he and I were like, did you see this? Did you see this? And so that gave us the opportunity to chat with our son about everything and things that you should post and shouldn't post and all of the, the whole conversation that you need to have. But like you said, Tess, like you need to be all in on this, because if you're not, like this is our children's childhood. So it's so important to have these conversations that we had, is to say what is acceptable and not acceptable to post online.
Yes, exactly.
Earning your degree online doesn't mean you have to go about it alone. At Capella University, we're here to support you when you're ready. From enrollment counselors who get to know you and your goals, to academic coaches who can help you form a plan to stay on track. We care about your success and are dedicated to helping you pursue your goals. Going back to school is a big step, but having support at every step of your academic journey can make a big difference. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
So tell me a little bit about your book, For the Sake of Our Youth.
Yeah. So I started writing this book actually as if I'm being completely honest, as a rebuttal to a news article that came out in my local community. And what was happening was there was this huge surge of adolescent suicides across the nation, but specifically in my community. We were losing teen after teen after teen. And I was working with so many teenagers who were struggling with suicidal thinking. And a news article came out that was talking about suicide with teens, and I didn't like anything I was reading. It was very old school thinking. They were not talking or thinking about screens or social media and how that could have an effect at all. And so I sat down to write what I thought was going to be an article that I could submit to this local newspaper. But I just kept writing. I just kept going, and 80,000 words later, I was like, I think this is more than just a little article. I think this might be a book. So I pitched it to a couple of publishers and got picked up with one. And so basically it's talking about what adolescents are truly going through in today's world, how screens and social media really is affecting their mental health, and not just the occasional teenager. I share in my book that every child is not, how do I want to word this? Your child is not immune to the things that are happening online. There's no person or child, especially, that can get away from all the toxicities that come with being online. And so I really felt pulled to share this with other parents. So the first half of the book is talking about 6 cultural influences that I have found that are creating this epidemic of low mental health for adolescents, self-harm, suicidal ideation, all of that. And then the second half of the book is where I talk about, well, what can we actually do about it? What can parents really, really do about it? I wrote that book. It was published in 2020. And so I'm currently actually revising it and doing an updated version because so much has, progressed since 2020. Obviously, the pandemic made things a lot worse for our kids. So yeah, the whole book is about basically modern parenting in this tech world.
Yeah, it's so needed. Like these conversations, I think, are so important because they're conversations that, I think people are having with their spouses, maybe they're having with their friends, but I think it needs just to be out there on a larger scale. Did you happen to read Jonathan Haidt's new book, The Anxious Generation?
I did, and I loved it. So I am proud to say that I'm on his team of experts, and that my nonprofit is an aligned organization. So I met him a little bit ago, and then his book came out, and I mean, I whizzed through that thing so fast. So glad someone like him is speaking up about this. You know, there's been a handful of us who have talked about this for almost a decade now, but it is so powerful when someone like Jonathan Haidt brings this to the forefront for people. I wish it was like 10 years ago, but I'm so glad it's out now. It's a really great book. It's got all the research and the statistics and the really important things that parents need to know about that. And then he gives his 4 societal norms that he wants to see changed within our society. I have some that I feel strongly about more than others, but also in my own work, I add on like a bunch more. And I really like his book. It's kind of hard to get dads on board a lot of times. And this book has seemed to, or at least dads hearing him on podcasts and watching him on things has really helped dads become alert. So I really like Jonathan's male voice and what's the word? This wave he's creating for the dads too, because dads are a little bit harder to reach. But it's a great book. Everyone should read it. Absolutely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's interesting that you were saying about the dads are harder to reach. Is it that they are more lax in their screen time monitoring, or do you think it's more of like a mom concern?
Yeah, I think that moms generally are more concerned about the well-being of our kids. Not that dads are not. They love their kids. I know their intention is good. But I do think moms are more like, you know, the emotional side where they're looking at things in the bigger picture. And I think that when I start to talk to parents and, you know, I go speak to schools and communities all the time, and 98% of them are moms that come. Dads don't come. The dads that do come are great. But it just seemed, and I think also men tend to gravitate more towards technology in general. And so I think that they might get worried that that side is getting taken away from them. I don't know exactly, but I think there's, you know, kind of a layered answer to that just dads, whether they're working more than the moms are or whatever, they're just not seeing it for what it really is. And it was actually whenever I started talking about the financial burden of getting your kid a smartphone starting at 10 years old and how much you can save and put towards their college. It was like something like $7,000. I would have to fact check and look back at my notes, but something like you could save $7,000 if you wait until they're like juniors in high school to give them a smartphone. And that got a lot of men's attention. So it's interesting, you know, what gets their attention and what doesn't. And that's not the case for all dads. I know there are tons of dads too, I know personally, that feel very passionate about this as well. So
yes, my husband considers this a lot. You know, this is something that he and I talk about, is the phones and the tablet use and all of that. And he's a huge fan of Jonathan Haidt too. So he was talking about this book, you know, like a long time ago, like while he was still writing it and stuff like that. So it's a big topic. And it's one of those ones where it's like, where do we even start? But I think that we could all just start in our own homes, and then also having conversations so that we can all, you know, try to get on board. And again, going back to my friend's post, when people were like, no, you can't be like that across the board. There was a certain nuance to it. And like, of course, there's a certain nuance. But like you said, like there was a time where we didn't have car seats or seatbelts. Like when I was a child, I remember when they first introduced the seatbelt law, or even like non-smoking, you know, like smoking in restaurants and non-smoking in restaurants.
That wasn't that long ago, right?
It wasn't. It really wasn't. And so I do understand people's individual rights, but at the same time, you know, we do sort of have an epidemic of mental health issues with our youth, and also with older people as well. The other day we were out to eat, and we don't have our phones out during dinner, but I was
Yeah.
looking around and I was
Yeah.
actually shocked at how many older people, I'm saying 65 plus,
It's
were
really,
on their phones.
yes, I know. It's heartbreaking. And
I was shocked.
I know. And it's funny, not funny, but whenever I am out to eat and I'm with someone, my friend will like pinch me or elbow me and be like, Tessa, do you have your book? Just give it to that family over there. And I'm like, I haven't found like a good opening to like go up to a family and talk to them about it, which is fine. I'm not here to educate every single person that I see in public, but it does break my heart every single time I see that. And it's very, very common. And you make a really good point. I like what you said. Like, it starts at home, and then you have these conversations at home. You want to focus on your kids building resilience without a screen. You want to focus on your kids learning social skills and community support, connection. And then you take it to the other parents. However, you will get pushback. I mean, it is inevitable that there are so many parents out there who they might feel guilty. They might feel like you're shaming them. They might feel like this is the most ridiculous thing in the world. But again, I go back to, they must not know. They must not know if they're getting that defensive, or they are so comfortable with their 9-year-old scrolling TikTok while out to eat. They must not know, because if they knew that it could lead to such horrible, dark times, I would like to believe that they wouldn't allow it either.
Yeah, I'm all for taking a break out of your day sometimes.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
I understand that, but everything has to be within moderation, within,
Yes.
certain boundaries that, like you said,
Yeah.
about, like, first of all, 9-year-olds legally and technically should not be on TikTok because social
Right.
media is 13 plus, right?
Right.
But nowadays, I see really young kids on YouTube Shorts with the
Mhm.
same videos that are actually
Same.
on TikTok. Actually, my
Yeah.
son's friend was over yesterday, and this little girl is on her phone right from the second, like, I picked them up from school. And they were sitting on the couch once they got home. And I said to her, like, oh, are you on TikTok? And she's like, no, it's YouTube Shorts. But they were YouTube
Mhm.
Shorts that were, like, repurposed
Right.
from TikTok. But
Right.
it's just one of those things where it's like, I know that her parents are not nearly as diligent as I
Uh-huh.
am about
Yeah.
media consumption. And so then
Right.
it's hard, even though it's underneath my own roof there, to have that conversation. It's awkward. I
Yes.
mean, all I did was ask her, like, oh, is it TikTok? And she said, no, it's YouTube Shorts. And I kind of just left it alone. But,
Yeah.
it's hard too when the friends are getting together, or maybe, they're hanging out after school, or in my case, they were sitting on my couch in my living room. It's hard to sort of police that stuff.
Yeah. So one thing that I do is I like to invite friends over to our house first. Just, maybe it's a control thing. I don't know, but I want to get to know the kids that my kids are hanging out with. And I always say to the mom, and just so you know, he's going to come back super exhausted because we don't really do screens here. So they are going to get busy playing. And every time, without fail, the mom responds with, oh my goodness, thank goodness you do that. And how do you do that? Or, we're the same way. We don't do a lot of screens either. It's so comforting to know you don't either. So we create that bond. Or if they say to me, how do you do that? I'm always like, let me tell you. Like, here, come on in for a cup of coffee. But usually what I like to do to open up conversation with other parents is say, oh my gosh, did you read this new article? Or did you read this book by Jonathan Haidt or the amazing Tessa Stuckey? Did you, I saw this thing when I was scrolling Instagram, and it really made me think that maybe our kids aren't ready to be online as much as I thought they were. And you just open it with some sort of fact or some sort of thing you just heard about, and just let them talk about it. And 10 times out of 10, parents are right there struggling with you. saying, oh my gosh, I know, like these dang things. And the hard part is the parents who say, yeah, it's horrible. Oh man, the world our kids live in, or, oh, it's so different from when we grew up. But then they follow it with, but what are you going to do? Like the genie's already out of the lamp. Oh, well. And I'm always like, well, actually, so I will come back with more, but I know I have an upper hand because some people know who I am and why I feel so strongly about this. So I just encourage parents to keep talking about it with the people in your life, because just like the car seat, just like cigarettes, it's going to take a little bit of that persuasion. And it's worth being persistent on.
Yeah, 1,000%. Tell me about Look Up.
So it's interesting. There's been a couple times when you've spoken during this interview that I'm like, ooh, I want to bring up Look Up right now. So Look Up is a nonprofit that I started about a year ago. I have been speaking. I wrote my book. I have a podcast and all of this for quite a while now. But I found that the hardest part is getting in front of the parents. And I want to be able to get in front of parents and not have to charge an arm and a leg. So I started this nonprofit so that I could offer this message for free to anyone who would listen. That also turned into more of a solution-focused situation. So now my nonprofit, we have those answers for when you're overwhelmed and you don't know where to begin. Look Up has got your back for video games, phones, social media, what to do if you have given your kid access to everything and now you're totally regretting it, or you can see that they're totally addicted. My nonprofit will work with families one-on-one to help coach them to get back to that healthy space. So it's about awareness, but it's also about the solution piece as well.
That's incredible. So often we just hear like, okay, this is the education, but there's no real like solutions to sort of like back that up. So that's incredible to hear that, Tessa.
Yeah.
I love that.
I feel I've been doing this for so long now. I can confidently say I have an answer for all of those common questions that parents have. And I have a solution for it too.
That's the most important thing, because it's one thing to talk about it. It's a whole nother thing to offer solutions.
Absolutely.
So I asked this question of all of my guests, and I have a feeling that I may know your answer already. But Tessa, what do you think is the biggest modern mom problem right now?
I really and truly tend to blame social media for everything. And I will say that I think, similar to what you've heard from other moms, is this idea that you have to be perfect, that you have to mold these perfect little beings, that they have to eat clean 100% of the time, that you have to have the knowledge for all the screen time things, that you have to peaceful parenting and discipline the right way. And it's all so overwhelming that I think the modern day problem for moms is getting so overwhelmed that they want to just throw their hands up and not get involved in any of it. And I really do blame social media for that, for that comparison piece that you were talking about earlier. It's very, very strong and it's very hard to do. So I mean, my go-to answer is I think screens are the biggest problem for parents and moms, their own screen time, their kids' screen time, setting it all up. But I also think this idea to be perfect is right next to it.
Yeah. Like I said before, it's a common answer, but I keep asking it each week because I'm so curious. And I feel like, the more people we get talking about this, the more that it becomes a real thing. So Thank you for that. So Tessa, tell everyone, where can we find you online? Where can we read your book and learn more about Look Up and get help if we need help? Because it's not just the kids that are addicted too. I find myself looking at my phone too many times too. I have limitations set on my own social media usage, like even within Instagram.
And when I was doing a lot of my research for the book and working with teenagers, I would always get whatever app they were telling me, the newest one. And so I would let myself get immersed in it so I could truly feel what they were feeling and experience it. Not once did I put my phone down and feel good. Not once. I always felt so horrible for being lazy, comparing my body to other people, not being cool and creative enough, like whatever it was, the amount of dopamine, like it is just, you don't feel better when you pick it up. You really don't. But so I believe in using our devices to be productive. Text message, calling, and email are really great. And then obviously I'm on social media to try and reach people about these issues. So I think being online to be productive is the way to go, to be intentional.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. I always say you need to create more than you consume. Yes. I say that to my son. I say that to myself because I need reminders too. Yes. Say it to everybody. Absolutely. And then also another thing I always say to my son is that people are more important than screens. So you have to always look up and acknowledge people. If grandma and grandpa are speaking with you, you have to stop what you're doing and hit pause. And he's always like, but you can't pause online games, Mom. I'm like, I know, but still it's grandma and grandpa. You could give them 3 seconds of your time.
A little bit of, yeah.
Exactly. Tessa, thanks so much for being here. And thank you so much for sharing all of these wonderful insights.
Yeah. Anytime.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Modern Mom Probs. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive in today's problem with me, your host, Tara Clark. Join me next time when I'll be interviewing another great guest and tackling another modern mom problem. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and a rating. As always, you could head over to Modern Mom Probs on Instagram and give me a follow, or check out my book, Modern Mom Probs, A Survival Guide for 21st Century Mothers, available online wherever books are sold. Well, that's it for today. See you next time, folks.
Earning your degree online doesn't mean you have to go about it alone. At Capella University, we're here to support you when you're ready. From enrollment counselors who get to know you and your goals, to academic coaches who can help you form a plan to stay on track. We care about your success and are dedicated to helping you pursue your goals. Going back to school is a big step, but having support at every step of your academic journey can make a big difference. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
I've got prostate cancer, but I really wanted to make it to the big game with my grandson. And here we are. Go, go, go!
With Erleada, apalutamide, being there is possible. Erleada is a prescription medicine used to treat prostate cancer that has spread to other parts of the body and still responds to a medical or surgical treatment that lowers testosterone. Erleada may cause serious side effects, including heart disease, stroke, or severe skin reactions, which can lead to death, falls, fractures, and seizure. Seek immediate medical attention if you experience symptoms of a stroke or severe rash. Erleada can cause harm to or loss of an unborn baby. Common side effects were fatigue, joint pain, rash, decreased appetite, weight loss, high blood pressure, hot flash, and diarrhea. Ask your doctor if Erleada is right for you. Or tap this ad to visit Erleada.com. CP4392667V1.
At Best Western, we can't promise you the perfect family beach vacation. We can't promise that it won't rain, or that you won't get a sunburn, or that your family won't endearingly call you Lobster Mom for weeks afterward. What we can promise is a warm welcome and a comfortable room amidst all the joyful chaos. Lobster Mom. Life's a trip. Make the most of it at Best Western, with over 4,200 hotels worldwide.
My name is Nicole Kidman, and I've wanted to do a rom-com for so long, and along came A Family Affair. It's a great romantic comedy, and it's laugh out loud. If you feel like, I just need to curl up and watch something that feels very comforting, it's the Netflix experience. There's laughter and there's joy. That's A Family Affair.
A Family Affair, starring Nicole Kidman, Zac Efron, and Joey King. Directed by Richard LaGravenese. Rated PG-13. Sexual content, partial nudity, and some strong language. Only on Netflix, June 28th.
With the $5 meal deal at McDonald's, you pick a McDouble or a McChicken, then get a small fry, a small drink, and a 4-piece McNuggets. That's a lot of McDonald's for not a lot of money.
Price and participation may vary. For a limited time only.